Well, fashion really one thing, if Kamala Harris were to win, will definitely be talked about. After all, she will be the first woman to have done so, if at all, since the race is getting really close. But it's time to move on now and shift gears and shift focus to the world of auto, where Overdrive has pitched 3 top-shelf sub 500cc retro-themed roadsters bikes from 3 renowned motorcycle manufacturers against each other to see which one actually does best. So it's time to look at the Royal Enfield Guerrilla 450 versus the Triumph Speed 400 versus the Hero Maverick 440 in comparison. Enjoy.
Now, all 3 motorcycles here have an upright riding position with wide handlebars. But that's pretty much where the similarities end, to be honest. Now, each have their own sets of unique charms in their design. And let's start off with the Triumph. Now, I think the Speed 400 would get lost in the crowd if not for this golden upside-down fork up front, but I'm not really sure if that's such a bad thing. The silhouette here is that of a classic street bike, and it's got a rather narrow midsection unlike the others here, which makes it feel like a motorcycle of a much smaller capacity. So not really ideal if you're looking for that big bike feel, because in that same sense, the Hero and Enfield offer more. The riding position on the Triumph is upright, but quite relaxed with the low position foot pegs. The attention to detail and the level of fit and finish is a real standout with the Speed. It aesthetically tries to mimic that what you get with bigger, more expensive bikes, which is great to see and feel. In terms of features, it's got a rather plain but slightly odd instrumentation readout. Now, I would have preferred if it had an analog tacho needle and a digital speedo readout instead, but that's alright. Now, there's no Bluetooth connectivity here as well, and in fact it's the only one that misses out on this feature. But it's the only one that gets switchable traction control. Now, bar and mirrors, well, it lends a touch of class, but it could get in the way when you're trying to squeeze past standing traffic. The Maverick 440 is a rather bold statement from Hero. It looks and feels very premium by the company's standards, and although it shares many of its cycle parts with the Harley-Davidson X440, I love the fact that this one has these tank extensions that cover the otherwise ghastly gap between the tank and the fork, as you can see on the Harley. The end can is a lot better looking too. In the pictures, it shows off hints of a muscle bike, and when you actually get down to riding it, you'll see that part of that character is in fact translated. You'll feel a certain amount of heft with this one, but it's not a burden by any means. The upright riding position with mid-mounted foot controls is not overly stressing as well. The saddle gives you plenty of room to move about, and it's got lots of Hero branding all over, which does look neat in some places, like the H-themed lights at both ends. The Maverick also may have the least interesting display of the 3 out here today, but the patch on the left side of the handlebar really gets to me. Probably because I know that it's the place that the toggle buttons would ideally be on the more expensive Harley-Davidson X440. And this is also the only one that gets twin shocks at the rear as well. There's no hiding this Guerrilla. It's a bike that stands out no matter what colorway you choose. And it looks like a motorcycle that's been going to the gym regularly and not skipping out on leg days either. I mean, look at those tires. It's got the biggest section tires for a bike of its kind, with the 120 up front and a 160 section at the rear. Still, it feels a lot lighter than the Himalayan, 450 at least. Well, there's no upside down fork, a smaller wheel at the fore, and yes, there is an odd looking gap in the headlight housing, but aside from that, nothing much to complain about. The bike looks big and it feels so when you actually get astride it as well. The tank looks massive, but it holds just 11 liters of fuel, which is too shy of the others out here. The riding position is a little more aggressive with higher mounted foot pegs, so taller riders will feel a little cramped over long distances on this one. I feel a longer seat would have suited the Guerrilla better too. This top spec model has got the fancy TFT display, which allows you to cast your phone screen onto the device, and it's got all the switchgear from the Himalayan 452, which is good for most part. Now, this one's got switchable ABS and it's even got 2 ride modes. But I didn't like how Eco mode dials down the attitude of this bike, so I pretty much stayed away from it. I think the more attention you crave, the more you'll fancy the Guerrilla. Slightly more mature riders, on the other hand, will fancy the other two. But once again, looks are a subjective matter.